Alright, Texas Natural Resource Code, Title 3, Oil and Gas, Subtitle C, with the Pooling Cooperative Agreement, the Chapter 101, Cooperative Development, Subchapter A, General Provisions, 101, 001, Definition for the Chapter Commission, the meaning of the Railroad Commission of the Texas Acts 1977, Section 101, 002, the existing agreement that rights, none of the provision of the chapter restrict any of the rights of the person now may have to make of the enter into unitization and pooling agreements, Act 1977, Section 101, 003, with the applicability, none of the provisions of the chapter impair of the power of the commission to prevent waste order under the oil with the gas conservation law with the except the provided in Section 101, 004, or repeal, modify, impair with any of the provisions Section 8502 through 8503 with the 8541, 55, 56, and through 8564, 85-125, 85-201 through 207, 85-241 through 243, and 85-249 through 252, and or 85-381 through 85-385 of the subchapter J with the chapter 85 of the subchapter P with the chapter 91 relating to Oil and the Gas Conservation Act of 1977, amended in 2007, Section 101, 004 with the conflict with the Antitrust Act for the agreement of operation over the agreements which are of the accordance with the provision of the chapter becoming necessary to right? Waste conserve of the natural resource of the state shall not be construed in violation of the provision Chapter 15 Business Commercial Code as amended if the court find with the conflict between the provision chapter of the Chapter 15 Business Commercial Code as amended. Provision in this chapter are intended with a reasonable exemption of the law with the necessary public interest stated within subsection A of the section. C if the court find with the conflict exists between the provision of the Chapter 15 of the Business Commerce for the Code that may amend with the find with the provision of the chapter with a not reasonable exemption instead of the Chapter 15 with the intent with the legislative provision in this chapter any of the confliction on a portion of them shall be declared with the invalid rather than declaring Chapter 15 of the Business of the Commercial Code as amended any of the portion invalid. Act in 1977, subchapter B of the Cooperative Agreement of the Secondary Recovery Option, Section 101-011, authorized agreement to separately own property subject to the approval of the Commission, provided the chapter for the person owning with the controlling production lease of the royalty with the other interest of the separate property in the same oil, gas field, may voluntarily enter into the performance agreements of either or both of the following purposes: 1, to establish the pole, the units necessary to effect the secondary recovery option for oil and gas, including those known as cycling, recycling, repressuring, water, flooding pressure, and maintenance, to establish operating cooperative facilities necessary to the secondary recovery operations, to establish pooled units, cooperative facilities necessary for the conservative use of the gas, including those extracting, separating the hydrocarbons from the natural gas, casing head gas, and returning the dry gas to formation underlying with the land lease, the committee of this agreement that Acts 1977. Section 101-012, persons bound by agreements for the pooled units of the cooperative facilities do not bind on land or royalty owner of the lease or lesser of the overriding royalty owner, any of the other person that does not execute them. The agreement is bind only with the person who execute their heirs, successors, and sign of the legal representative. No person shall be compelled with the requirement to enter into such agreement. Section 101-13, Commission approval. Agreements for the pooled unit of the cooperative facilities not legal with the effect of the unit until the Commission finds that after the application notice for the hearing of the agreement if necessary with accomplished for the purpose specified in Section 101-0111 of this code, with the section interest of the public welfare being reasonably necessary to prevent waste to promote the conservation of oil and gas. Rule 3, the rights of the owner and all the interests in field will are signers of the unit agreement if not would be protected under this operation. For the estimated additional cost of the entity with the conducting of the operation will not exceed the value of the additional oil and gas recovered on the behalf of the person with effective, including the royalty owners, the owners of the overriding royalty of the over gas payments, carried interest into the lien, claimants, and others, as well as the leasers. They are available the existing methods of the facility with the secondary recovery of the operation for the conservation utilization of the gas, the particular area of the field, with the concern with the bowl, for the inadequate for the purpose of the area covered by the unit agreement. Contains one of the part of the field with the reasonable benefit of the defined with the development that the owners of the interest of the oil, of the gas, for each of the tract of the land, for the area of the reals reasonably defined with the development are given the opportunity to enter the unit until the same yardstick with base for the owner of the interest of the oil and gas under the other tract itself and its unit. B. A finding of the Commission of the area described in the unit, the agreement is insufficient for the cover of more acres than it's necessary to accomplish for the purpose of the chapter's grounds for the disapproval of the agreement. Acts 1977, Section 101-014, jointly owned properties. None of the provision of the chapter should be construed with the requirement of the approval of the Commission voluntary agreements for the joint development operation jointly owned property. Section 101-0115, Commission Regulation. An agreement to execute under the provision of chapter subject to any valid order of the rule of the Commission relating to the location, space, and the of the conservation or other matter for which the authority of the Commission, whether to adopt the private the subsequent the execution of the agreement is Section Acts 1977, Section 101.016, permissible provisions. An agreement authorized the chapter may provide for the location, space, and the input well with extension leases for the covering any part of the land committed with the unit as long as the operation for the drilling of the reworking area. Reworking or conduct of the unit as long as the production of the oil and the gas of the paying quantity that had been any part of the land the least committed within the unit. However, no agreement may be relieved of the operative for the obligation developed reasonable for the land. Leases is wholly committed to the unit. Agreement authorized for the chapter may provide for the dry gas for the extraction from the hydrocarbons that may be returned with the formation underlying with the land lease from the leasers. Land or leases committed to the agreement that may provide for the royalty with the required for the pay for the gas for the return. Act 1977, Section 101.017, the prohibited provision. No agreement authorized by the chapter may attempt to contain field rules of the area of the field with the provide for a limited amount of the production of the oil gas for the unit property the provision of the being solely for the provisions provided to the Commission. No agreement authorized by the chapter may provide directly, indirectly, the cooperative refining with the crude petrol of the distillated, the condensate or the gas, any of the byproduct with the crude petrol and the distillated, condensated, or gas extraction, liquid hydrocarbons from the gas, the separation of liquid hydrocarbons into propane, butanes, ethanes, distillated condensates, or natural gasoline, without any additional processing, any of them, and not considered to be refined, with no agreement authorized with the chapter by provided with the cooperative marketing of the crude petroleum, the condensate, with the distillated gas, any products of them, by other products above them. Article Acts 1977. Alright, Section 101.018, effective approval of the outside of the unit. The approval of an agreement authorized by the chapter shall not into itself be construed the finding of the operation for the different kind of the character of the portion of the field outside of the unit are wasteful or not into the interest of the Conservation Act 1977. Subchapter C, Public Land. Section 101.051, authority of the Commissioner of the General Land Office for the subject of the approval of specified in Section 101.052 with the scope of the Commissioner of the General Land Office on behalf of the state of the Texas of any fund belonging to the state that may execute the contract committing the agreements is declared lawfully with the provision of the subchapter 1 with the royalty interest of the oil and gas are both reserved to the state and any fund with the state by law any patent with any contract or sale with the under the terms of any of the oil gas leave the lawful issue of the official board agent agency authorized with the state of the two the free royalty interest wherever the lease or unlease of the reserve of the state pursuant to section 51.201 or 51.054 of this code Acts 1978. Acts 1977 amended to the Acts 1987. Or Section 101.052, necessary approval of the other person of the state agency, the agreement of the commencement for the one royalty interest of the land, set with the part of the constitution with the law of the state, with the form of the permanent free school, with the funding of the several asylum funds in riverbed, with the inland lakes, with the channel, with the areas within the tidewater limited, including the islands of the lakes, bay, with the inlets, with the marshes, with the reefs, and with the bed of the air sea, to the free of the royalty interest, wherever the leased or unleave of the reserve of the state, pursuant to section 51.201, 51.054 with the court. This code must be approved of the school land board, an agreement over the coverage of the land lease for the oil and gas under the Relinquishment Act, codified in subchapter F of the chapter 52 of this code must be executed with the owners of the soil with agreement over the commitment for the relative interests of the land owners, other than those covered in subsection A and B of this section, must be approved by the board official with the agent agency with the authority of the state vested with the authority to lease or to approve the leasing of the land areas of the oil and gas Acts 1977 amended in 1987. Or that was Texas Natural Resource Code Title 3, Oil and Gas, Subtitle C, Pool and Cooperative Agreement, Chapter 101, Cooperative Development.